Okay, students, I'm going to make a change to this week's assignment and specifically the grading of this week's assignment. The data set change had an unexpected result as a part of this. Depending on what you used as far as your target, you could have a problem running the SVM. You'll get a message, no support vectors found in model building. So I wanted to kind of run you through, explain why you're seeing this type of behavior. So first of all, let's talk about what a support vector machine is. What it tries to do is try to divide up the into groups or classes of the data, the two different groups. So if we looked at our data and if we went for credit worthiness as the output, the target variable that we want to look at, it'll actually create an SVM. Now, this will take a massive amount of time if you select a whole bunch of other factors that go with it, just because of the amount of time it takes to do that. But what the SPSS will do is it will try to divide these up into two groups such that the individual distance from the closest data points, this is what's known as the support vector, that those are roughly equal. Linear relationships also come into play as part of this. So if it can build this type of a model, it'll create that hyperplane, which is really a decision boundary between those two classes of the data. If it cannot, so if our target is the status, for instance, which again I was recommending and a number of students were using that, if you do this, then you're going to get this message, no support vectors found in the model building. Now, what I didn't kind of explain when going through that part of it is there is a way that you can actually use this. There's two things that you can do. First of all is you can add weighting to the samples, so the result will be more of a balance. It'll come out more like a balance like what you see on the left-hand side. Now, to do this, one student actually used the auto node in order to correct the data or to normalize the data out, and their model actually built. Well, that's one way that you could solve for this, not necessarily the way that I would recommend. The second way is there's actually some code that you could put into place. It's known as the kernel hack, or adjusting the kernel on the front end of it. That's something much more advanced than what I would have as part of a introductory or a level 2 SPSS class. And I really didn't want to take it down the way of making a student go through that additional piece of it. You'll probably just become a lot more confused. So I wanted to say is I'm going to offer you two different options here. So first of all, those students who have already submitted, I will already use this. And I'm going to actually show you, here is an example of one student's submission. If you're using this for your settings, it will go through. The SVM will build, but again, because you can see the number of inputs that you see, it's going to take a considerable amount of time to do that. So if you've already submitted, and there are some students that have, if you're able to get that working, I'll give you an extra 10 points credit. So that's going to be extra credit that you'll get on the assignment for doing the SVM portion of that assignment. If you're having trouble with it and you submitted and you couldn't get that part, or if you haven't submitted yet, you can skip the SVM piece of it and you're not going to be penalized for that. So I'm not going to grade you on that specific node. You'll get graded on the rest of the nodes that are in that model, but not that specific node. So you have these two options. For those students who have already submitted, if you did submit it and you got it, I'll give you the extra 10 points. If you didn't, then we'll just skip the SVM and you won't get penalized. So there's no downside to you for doing that if you've turned in already. If you haven't turned in, you can go ahead and just skip the SVM. Now, if you're interested in kind of seeing an SVM in action, you can set your settings to what you see on the screen and run it. I will warn you again, because of the number of inputs we have here, it takes a while for it to come up with those support vectors. So it does eventually come up with them. It took my machine a couple of hours to really grind that out and to crank that out. So probably should have looked at that ahead of time before switching the data files, but really the interest in doing that for you for this semester was to give you a different data set, to give you something a little bit more larger, because as we've gone through our previous groups, the previous classification and behavioral segmentation in this group here, this class, you've kind of turned up a lot of questions. You wanted to see larger data sizes. So that's where I grabbed the data set off of Kaggle, so let's go for that. For this particular data set, an SVM is going to require some additional monkeying and jigging around with it that you don't want to necessarily want to spend a lot of time on. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a pass on that particular question as part of the submission. You got any questions, please reach out to me, or if you need any additional things that you're struggling with the assignment, please let me know, and we can answer those too as well. Have a good one. Thanks.